like I have so much like heat for this movie because the potential to me was so. And this, for the record, this is not on the show doc or anything. If you're listening, I don't know if this is gonna get cut out because this is like a super, super, super aside. Like,
yeah, we've been talking about Quiet Place for 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, fuck it. Let's welcome to Loosely Defined, friends.
Yeah.
we just at this point we're just talking about just movies, life.
Movies.
You good? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it was a good weekend. Overwatch League and the Oscars, which we'll talk a bit about. Not that I watched the Oscars. This won't be a review of the Oscars ceremony or talking about that because neither of us really watched it. I watched a couple of the speeches on Twitter and I tuned in like right as the last two awards were happening, so Best Actress and Best Picture. But like I literally just cared about like who won. I didn't really stay long. Seems like the speeches nowadays are like, for most award shows, it's like one of two things. It's either like, just the generic like thanking family producers and stuff. And I shouldn't say generic because it's genuine, but like,
at this point it just seems generic after you.
It's like it's for that person, but it's not for the audience. Or it's like, did you see Joaquin's speech?
I haven't seen any of the speeches. I know that Joaquin's was my dad, who like saw the Joker. I think. Text me just like, yo, Joaquin won. I'm like, I didn't even know you were watching the Oscars. Like, he was super hyped.
But yeah, his speech was very like what I would say is the other type of speech was not necessarily even just political speeches, but like people who go up with like something prepared to say beyond just thank you. And those ones I think can be good or bad, but ultimately it's like I can watch them the next day if like people are saying they're actually worth watching.
Yeah.
But
it's not a Nintendo Direct. Like Joaquin Phoenix isn't going to be like, and now if you go on your PlayStation right now.
Yeah, he's not like, exactly, like.
That'd be wild though.
And like even if they're talking about
right now.
Even if they're talking about serious stuff like he was, it's not like he's suddenly like, and that's why I'm announcing my retirement from acting to become a animal rights activist full time or something like that. Like he's just saying like, hey, important stuff, we should care about it, Like I watched Taika's speech too for winning for Jojo Rabbit, and like I liked it because I liked him, but it was like I don't know. Plus, I watched a lot of interviews around this time of year or like end of last year time when all the awards are coming out because that's when these like people are in the press the most. And I feel like if you just watch like one interview with any of the winners, you get more out of it than like watching their speech. And Renee Zellweger's speech went on for way too long. It was very uncomfortable, and it's not even like funny in a way that I would say, "Oh, you should check it out." Like, just like I really like wanted it to end so quickly. Like,
wait, so what happened there? Like, explain that kind of because
she just kind of just started rambling. Trending, but it started out being like thanking Judy Garland and being like there are these like icons and stuff, but then it just spun off in weird directions, and just every time you thought it was going to end, it ended, and I couldn't tell if it was nerves, if it was like just her. I don't know I've never seen much with her, so I don't know how like weird she is as a person. Maybe she was just
pre-gaming so hard, just pre-gaming
that too.
So
like I don't know, and like I was surprised. Like I know the big awards like that, they typically don't use the music to like usher people off until like way late into it. But it seemed like she was so clearly not like going towards the conclusion that I'm surprised they let it go on that long. I was like, normally I'm kind of like, no, don't play the music. Like let them finish what they're saying. But in this case, I was kind of like, I think she does need the push to stop talking.
She just like blacks out when she gets not even out of alcoholism, just out of nervousness. Just like, okay, it's happening. And then she wakes up at her seat. Like,
but yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the winners and stuff. I don't really have a whole lot to say other than that. I think plenty of people will have plenty to say about Parasite winning. I think we've mentioned it on this show. We both watched it together, and I would say we're both probably pretty happy with it.
Yeah, like I haven't. Yeah. The only reason I don't want to say like, oh, it like totally deserved it over the rest, because like I've only seen that and Joker. So
yeah,
like obviously I still want to see Jojo Rabbit 1917. If not, you know what? I said I was going to go see a movie later. If 1917 is still in theaters, I might try to see that before Birds of Prey, because I know that like
catch 1917 in theaters for sure.
Yeah, because it's going to be the big screen thing. But I do want to see Harley Quinn. Over your
Birds
shoulder.
of Prey and the Fantabulous
And
Emancipation of the Coward
the
Robert
assassination.
Ford.
Yeah. It's like, I remember we added something
that
to
shoulder. That's right. Yeah, Harley Quinn.
it.
Yeah,
I'm actually
probably won't be winning any Oscars. Maybe it would get one for like makeup or something. I don't know. And hairstyling.
That goddamn Twitter clip that they someone mashed up like the Doja Cat song from this movie with 212 by Azalea Banks, and it is like it's 30 seconds long, but now it's my favorite song.
The soundtrack is really good.
So like how,
I think
how
it's interesting.
was it?
Well, I before I like get directly into my overall thoughts on the movie, just to quickly tie it back into the Oscars, like Joaquin winning for Joker is like a big deal because it's not only a comic book movie, but I don't know, in the discourse of the Academy Awards, it's kind of not being talked about as a comic book movie.
Yeah.
But still, the fact is, 2 people have won Oscars for playing the Joker, and then we get this Birds of Prey movie like pretty soon after. I just like, obviously they're popular characters. I love the Joker as a character. And like Harley Quinn has really been growing on me over the last couple of years too, and I did like her in Birds of Prey big time. I just like, I wanted to at least get your take on like, is it something about the Joker as a character like that makes like is it just coincidence? Like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think about that because part of me feels like, oh, the Joker is a character where an actor can just kind of go nuts. But then we saw with like Jared Leto, like all the press was about like how he's just going super into it and doing method, and then nobody liked it. And then Joaquin essentially did the same thing and everyone liked it. And it just seems like, or like the press around it was the same idea. You know what I mean? Like it was like in both cases, and the same with Heath Ledger. Like all the press is about like how they went method and they took it super seriously. It was like, it was different.
I kind of disagree with the comparisons between all 3 of them. Honestly, I feel like there was really not. And with I hate that I was about to call man's Joker as we're talking about 3 different Jokers, but Heath Ledger. With Heath Ledger's, and we were very young. And like we were in elementary school when the fucking trailer for watching the trailer for Dark Knight like changed my life a little bit. But I also know that like I was very, very young and not super in tune with movie news. So like I don't remember a lot of the buzz around Heath Ledger until after the movie came out and until after people saw the performance and obviously after he died. With Jared Leto, it was like, especially coming off of Heath Ledger, especially after coming off of the trash fire that was Batman v Superman, like Jared Leto more than anyone else had something to prove. And I think like, and I don't really blame Jared Leto like individually, because obviously there like the direction had something to do with it. The costume design, we've talked about this before. Like I very much don't like it. I see what they're, and if they okay, Greg Miller and the Kind of Funny guys have talked about this before. If they just had the gall to just go for it and just say, you know what, we shot the bed with the first few movies, but we have a plan here and we're going to keep going with it, and they made Jared Leto just the Jason Todd Joker, then I would be all for it. Like that context to me changes everything. But like, we're talking about the portrayals and stuff like that, but like with the idea of like going back to your original question, I'm sorry, I'm like thinking about everything. What makes like the Joker special? Like before like Jack Nicholson, like he was just the fucking weird clown prince. Like he didn't really have, like he had the Death of Robin storyline, and you had like the Killing Joke, but those weren't really like they couldn't really be adapted that well. But like the just I'm a mob boss, that was a good grounded take. And obviously Heath Ledger's like man's died for the role. Like whether or not you want to argue that like the role actually killed him, but like I feel like a lot of people will agree like
that's
the preparation,
the narrative,
yeah, like the narrative around it is the preparation for the role kind of killed him, and then he was like gave one of the greatest performances of all time. So I don't even think it's the character in like the comic sense, because like if they really wanted to go down a like they could go down several different routes with the Joker. Like he's kind of just crazy, wears like crazy and fun. I feel like just saying like Jared Leto's Joker was just like, I'm unhinged and I'm dangerous. You don't want to be in the same room with me. Like, yeah, but I wouldn't want to be in the same room as Killer Croc, but he's not the Joker. Like, there has to be some like level of fun with it and humor, and like even though it gets like really, 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 really dark, like it's you have to have a lot of range, I guess. And I feel like with Joaquin, like very different movies. Like the Joker is very different than Suicide Squad, is very different than Dark Knight, is very different than like Batman 96. But like, I don't know. To answer your question, I just think it's a lot to do. You have to do a lot. Whether or not it's done well is up to the person, I guess. I don't know. Like, I don't want it to come off as like I don't want the statement to be like the Joker's character is just really like profound and awarding, because like I don't. On a good day, he can be, you know, the symbol of anarchy. But on like most days, he's just something that Batman needs to get to, and like I'm fine with that. Like, I don't want it to be like the Joker says so, like the Joker, the character says so much about society that like anytime it's even shown to us a little bit.
No,
that, like,
I get that. Yeah, well, I didn't think you were saying that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Clearly, it can go wrong. You know, I mean, you can have underwhelming or just straight up, you know, bad Joker portrayals or performances too. It's not necessarily a matter of, you know, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. It's just I know that this movie will get taken into different directions and contexts, so I'm just like I'm not like it's a good movie. I don't feel inspired by it. like I'm not gonna.
I don't like that. It feels like people have to say that in order to like the movie or just claim they like the movie. I mean, I don't think it necessarily you have to, but I just like there's plenty of movies about sociopaths that you don't have to make this kind of like qualification for.
I don't have to, but
fair enough, I guess. But
I mean,
it's still like I would say most movies that are considered like the best movies of all time are about like bad or just like really like not admirable, not people that you would consider role models, you know. And I'm not talking about like what I think are like objectively like the best movies, but just like the you know, your Godfathers, your Citizen Kanes, like movies about people who are like obsessed with power or obsessed with, or like, you know, do horrible things like. And I think it's interesting that I've felt a shift happening in last couple of years where it seems like culturally we're not as into characters that are like having protagonists that we don't necessarily like or agree with, you know?
Well, you're saying that's happening more now or happening less now?
I think that's happening. I think those kind of characters are still happening, but I think people are less willing to people find that less appealing than they used to. I don't know if it's a matter of like I don't want to chalk it straight up to like, oh, people are too sensitive or whatever. I don't mean that necessarily. I just mean that it seems like people are kind of just sick of, or, you know, maybe if they're like younger and newer to it, like never really got used to the idea of having protagonists that are not admirable or likable people, you know. I think it's interesting because Joker, I think, gets more of that because it's a comic book movie, and not because it's a bias against the genre, but because comic book movies in general are so about the character. I mean, you don't even have to say comic book movie. You could just say it's like a movie with a like clear title character who everything revolves around in the same way, you know, Iron Man or Spider-Man or Batman, any of those movies are like tied directly around that one character. And, you know, obviously they become more of a focus, but like Parasite, not that I think it's a completely different type of characterization, but, you know, when people talk about that movie and how its characters are like, no one's really a good guy or a bad guy, you know, like it's talked in a way of praising, but a lot more what the conversation with Joker is. And for a lot of other reasons are, you know, this character is like I like, you know, like the idea of it being, it's like people taking it either because they believe it or they think other people will believe it, like people taking his character as some sort of like hero in the story rather than just being the protagonist, you know, because like it's that like, and I think it's because most people like who saw Parasite liked it more than Joker, and there's a lot of other considerations there, but it seems to me like a character like Joker, someone would be able to get away with it a little bit more maybe a couple years ago, and like Scorsese even got some criticism for it I think partially in backlash to his Marvel comments with the fact that like The Irishman and all of his movies are about just like a bunch of murderers and, you know, criminals and people who do horrible things. Exactly. Yeah, it's that whole thing. The fact that those two guys got lumped, like Scorsese did get lumped in, but ultimately Scorsese did get a lot less criticism of it, I think in large part because it's Scorsese. Yeah. I mean, because it's too easy to just say, oh, well, his movies are good and Joker's bad, you know? And I think that's the problem people have is just like, well, they just did it better. It's like, no, it's not. It's not like, that simple, you know?
The point you made earlier about people lacking the distinction between protagonist and like role model or like protagonist, like just because someone is the focus of the movie,
hero
does not mean,
and protagonist.
Yeah, like I think I told you someone at work was like, yeah, you know, when I saw Joker and he casual spoilers for Joker, fucking like, oh yeah, when he shot those kids, blah 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 blah, not children, when he shot those guys. Yeah, no, I'm trying to balance the people that have seen it and not seen it because like I don't want it to, I don't know. But, you know, the violent scenes, she was like, yeah, like, that's you know, you felt great for him and you wanted to. And I was like, no. Like, like, you're supposed to feel gross because he's fucking murdering people, but also you've been on his side this entire. Like, to me, the fact that I was, like, so uncomfortable the entire time, and yes, he's the protagonist, but also more than anything else during the course of this movie, I needed him to go to fucking jail for something. For, like, anything. Just stop it.
Like I think I texted you after I walked out and said, like, my first thought is I can't wait to see Batman kick his ass. Or, like, I hope we get to see Batman kick his ass.
I mean, I'm so really wishing that they just keep this separate. Like, I feel like it's
I just meant in the sense of, like, I want to see someone kick his ass.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice if it were a Batman, but...
Like,
by that point, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker would be, like, 70. And then you'd have like 25 or like 30-year-old Bruce Wayne just being like, I finally found you.
that'd be just Robert Pattinson for an hour and a half searching the city, doing some of the best detective work we've ever seen. I've heard that this is going to be like emphasizing Batman's detective skills. So like if it's a detective movie with Batman, so fucking down. And then at the end of it, they put the old CG on Joaquin Phoenix and they just have like 10 minutes of really uncomfortable fighting where like they do the Joker thing where it's just like, yeah, they make you feel like he deserves it. And then you see it happen and you're like, am I right to support this guy? And then they just keep going with the morally ambiguous characters until you get to, I don't know, Green Arrow. Give me a good Green Arrow movie.
Oh, I think that's been a long time coming, but Arrow being such a success on TV, I think delayed it for a long time.
I completely forgot that was a thing. I'm not going to lie to you.
It just ended this year, though, so it means that they can eventually move on to having a new Green Arrow. Plus, the fact that the show is called Arrow, I think, makes it a little easier. But since he's not a character like the Flash, like Flash, I feel like they're confident. Like, yeah, we can have a really popular and successful Flash show and series, but Green Arrow, they might be a little more hesitant to do that. It's like the same reason why like it took them the whole thing with Gotham is like, how do we make a Batman show without Batman? Because the movies are going to do Batman and they don't want to like muddy the waters or whatever, you know?
But I also think now with Supergirl having Superman in it, like that kind of opens the doors, right?
Well, they're going to have a Superman show. They're going to have a Superman and Lois show with the Superman from Supergirl. Yeah, that was kind of a big deal. I mean, Supergirl was a similar thing where it was like, how do we do a Superman show without Superman? But I think that's happening less now. It's partially because TV is no longer, like, that's the thing with Flash. It's like, yeah, he's a big enough character for the movies, but he's also not too big he can't be on TV. Like, Batman, it's like, no, he's too big for TV. I mean, Smallville was like a Superman show where the whole conceit of the show is like, we're never going to show him in the cape or flying because that's like a movie thing, you know? Like, that you wouldn't have Superman flying on TV. That's ridiculous, you know? I mean, when they did it way back in like the 50s, that was like before these things were ever considered big enough to be in movies. But now that they are the big movies, it's like, you know, we have to have some prestige for them. But that's kind of fading away.
But can we talk about how, like, I feel like nerdism and like nerdism being like stigmatized? Because I feel like as we were getting older, we were like kind of on the tail end of like kids calling each other nerd and like being... Like really bullying, like they're still bullying in schools, I assume. I don't fucking know. I was gonna say like I know I've been there.
Everyone over 50 seems to think there's no bullying and we need to bring it back, but
no, either there's no bullying or your kid being on your phone is gonna end up making them either bully other kids into shooting a school or whatever. I don't know. All of this to say, I feel like, because like video games are bigger than they've ever been, comic books are bigger than or comic book movies are bigger than they've ever been. Like
the characters, at least.
Yeah, like I feel like slowly we're getting. I don't want to say like we're eclipsing the like jock stereotype, but like at least it's on like common ground, to the point where like you can't acknowledge that like fucking like some of the most famous basketball players are also fucking really big gamers, and like Lil Wayne is now doing Xbox commercials because why not?
See, I think I've thought a lot about this because I think a lot of that stuff is surface level. And I don't necessarily mean that in like it's fake or I'm not trying to criticize it. I just don't think things have changed as much. Like on a surface level thing they have. Like the fact that like there are 80-year-olds out there now who know who Thanos is and like have seen a movie with him maybe, or like you're saying, like celebrities who are considered cool people and you know role models are playing video games or D&D. Stuff like that definitely makes a difference in terms of normalizing like all that, but I feel like way back when like the biggest movies everyone was seeing was like Alien or whatever. I don't know. Like I'm trying to think like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like the original Star Wars. Like even at those times, despite those being the biggest movies ever, like, you know, maybe you're a nerd and you can go up to the football player and say, hey, you saw Star Wars, and they'll be like, yeah, I saw Star Wars and I liked it. Like you could talk for like a second, but the second the nerd who's really like you or I is like, and it gets into any of the nitty gritty about it, like, you know, like, yeah, I liked Darth Vader's TIE Interceptor, you know, suddenly you like that's where you hit the wall. And I feel like it's similar now though, where it's like you know, if I feel much more comfortable talking about fucking Spider-Man in public with people I don't know very well than I did as a kid out of like less fear of you know, like whatever. But I yeah, but if I feel like if someone like says something about like how yeah, and then Spider-Man's gonna go meet Venom in the next movie, and I have to be like, well, actually, there's a contractual, like, people, I don't know, like, I think I'm still gonna get the same kind of looks I would have got if, you know, I did a similar thing, like, 10 years ago, or something like that.
I don't know.
And same with games, like, the Lil Wayne commercial, like, all these, like,
yeah, that was,
these, like, people are playing, like, Madden and Call of Duty, like, that's just because games are bigger. That's not because nerds are more quote unquote accepted. You know.
Yes and no. Like I think to your first point of being able to just talk to some random meathead and no disrespect, but I'm also trying to be like
no disrespect to our friendly meatheads out there.
Yeah, just take solace in the fact that you can beat me up. I don't give a shit. Fucking like. I think now it's easier because like when Star Wars first came out, there weren't fucking websites that you could go. There weren't people making their livelihoods off of you know, sharing Star Wars knowledge. Like there aren't Reddits or there wasn't Reddit. Goddamn, there wasn't Twitter. There wasn't like Tumblr. There weren't online communities where you could come together. And at that time, it was like just like you know, people when Star Wars first came out there's no way they could have known how fucking big Star Wars would continue to be in fucking 2020. So like I think if tomorrow, I don't know, just I feel like if with the amount of time that we've had with Star Wars specifically with games, kind of realizing like, oh, these things aren't going anywhere because games still are relatively new in terms of like.
Oh yeah,
like video games in terms
like
of
50 years old at most. Like,
and then like mainstream didn't really pick up until the 80s, and then from there it didn't become really like mainstream where like everyone had an Xbox or a Wii, like the Xbox 360 Wii, like that kind of to me made it. Even if it was just I'm gonna get it for Madden and 2K. And I want to have like a separate episode on my beef with EA games and like those games specifically, but a whole other thing. Like even if you're just getting it for like the annualized games, or you're just getting it when like the PS3 came out, like my friend got it. You also did it too, like just for the Blu-ray. Like your
I mean that's how my dad justified it as a gift for the entire family. But
okay, no, like
it was the cheapest Blu-ray player on the market for a while. That's definitely a thing.
Yeah, like my dad's friend had one, and it like blew my fucking mind that he just like had it in the case and didn't like it was in his like display case or whatever. And I was like, you don't play anything? He's like, yeah, like I have Uncharted, but I'm just like I don't. It's just there eventually, and I'm just like, bro, leave your house and leave me in here, like. And then he did. Like, I feel like whether or not you are willing or interested in having super in-depth discussions with a stranger about, you know, whatever random game, I feel like those opportunities are so much more common now. Like whether or not you actually want to do that, I feel like the fact that at work there are a bunch of people that are going to be talking about like, you know, basketball or just like just sports in general. The fact that I can't talk to them on that level, but I can just be like, y'all play the new Call of Duty, and then we're all pretty much on the same level in terms of like understanding interest, like the meta or whatever. It is half me, like, cause I don't play Call of Duty like that. Like it is like me or half of me having to make that extra step, but it's also opening up conversation with a lot more people that you wouldn't in the past. And I appreciate that.
I guess what I mean is less so that things aren't, I mean, because things are better now in that sense. I guess I view it as like things have shifted, you know, like nerds I think are nerdier now. So it kind of feels like nothing, like that's why it feels like things have changed less for me, you know, like the fact that I can spend however long, you know, researching Star Wars lore in a way I maybe couldn't have like 20 years ago. You know, it means there's so much more like I can't, or the fact is things have gotten maybe more niche or more specific because like the communities have become more connected. People have the opportunity to be into things that are a little more specific, but then once you bring it into quote unquote the real world, it becomes you know, nerdy or taboo again. I think the definition I like is Donald Glover's from the stand-up special from 10 years ago now.
He was talking about Obama.
He was talking about like Kanye and like a couple other people, and he's just saying that like being a nerd, like Kanye is a nerd because of very strange and specific stuff he's into, and it's the same thing with like anything really, like
robots
if you're
and
into
teddy bears.
if you're into something that's outside the mainstream and you're really into it and it's like specific, even if it's not necessarily like not even whether or not it's mainstream or not, it's just how specific and strange that specificity is in your interest that makes it kind of nerdy, you know? It's like there are like sports fans, and then there's like people who know every stat and stuff like that. And I think like, within certain sports communities, that person might be seen as a nerd, even within like quote unquote like a less nerdy subject.
Like
the
Johnny,
same way, you know.
Like our friend Johnny is the like hands down the nerdiest person I know, but in like so many different aspects. Like you can talk to him about video games to the same level that you can talk to him about movies, to the same level you can talk to him about like, not that I would, but about sports. Like if right now I text him like, hey, who is the best player on the Lakers in the 90s? I am so sure he would tell me very quickly, and I would trust his answer. And and with books and with history and stuff like that. Like if you have
he's
that
just
itch,
reading constant information and stories and stuff. Yeah,
like if you have that itch and just that like, you know what, I want to know fucking everything about this, then you have access to do that. You totally can. You can become an expert in something just because you want to.
And it goes back to my original point, which is essentially like I can go and talk to someone who knows who Kylo Ren is and knows who Rey is, and maybe because they saw the movie they know who Rey Palpatine is, but they don't know his name is Sheev Palpatine. They might not even really fully have understood how he like his entire plot throughout all the movies, you know? Like they maybe just saw the prequels once, like
or his midichlorian count.
Yeah, it's like all again, it's like
important information.
As Star Wars or Marvel or whatever example you choose became less quote unquote strange and specific, people got more strange and specific about those things, you know.
I mean, I like the idea that nerding or nerdism is like a and this is going to be a super generalization, and I'm like a 1990s cartoon way of thinking. But I'm just like, if you, like, let's be real, if society at this time values athletics more than anything else, and you can't throw a ball, or you just don't want to, like...
Yeah, it's really the don't want to, honestly. Yeah, like you played high school sports and you weren't bad, like, you're just, but that you're still a nerd. Like I was,
like I read comics on the way to basketball games. Like I was like I did sports mostly out of just like I need to stay fit, and this is how I have friends. Most of my friends are playing on the team this year, might as well. So like, but I forgot that. Just if you either can't or won't throw a ball, you need to feel valued in some other way, just as a person. Like you want to feel, you know. So like if you're within and I was gonna save this kind of for later, but I feel like it's a decent transition right now. Like so I went on my first Destiny raid last night, and it kind of hit. It showed me kind of where my like tolerance is in terms of nerdy shit, because like it was easily the nerdiest thing I've ever done. We played for 5 hours, and I was exhausted after. And I love Destiny 2, and I need to do it one more time on a harder difficulty to get the platinum trophy in Destiny 2, and I will do that. But also, I'm not looking forward to it, because it's just like it's like the end game in Destiny 2. It's like once you hit the level cap, once you do all this stuff, then you go take on the biggest, baddest, area in the game. And they have like a shit ton of different areas and stuff like that. But like I realized, like, as much as I'm interested in the Destiny lore and like the gameplay loop and like the reward system and stuff like that, I do not have enough just time in game to dedicate to like spending hours in this thing, doing it over and over and over and over again. Matt, like trying to learn all the different and working with a team of like total 6 of us. But like it got to the point where, so like there are raid Sherpas that'll get you through the game. Like we had to call someone in from Reddit to join our party. He's not in the game with us. He's just in our party, being like, all right, so, and you can tell he's like tired of shit. He's just like, all right, so where are you guys? Okay, yeah, you're gonna want to go to your left. Yeah, and then don't shoot that guy. Don't shoot that guy. Keep going. Okay, shoot that guy. Blah 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 blah. So I'm just like, for the amount of respect I have for like the people that got us through this, I'm also like, what else could we have been doing? And I'm now including myself in this. Like it like kind of was a wake up call of just like, this is like, I love this shit, but it was not worth it. Like I think I've been trying to use gaming as a force for like socialization more. Like I'm trying to just not use it as like, oh, it's a distraction. Like if I'm gonna play, I want to play with someone so that I can get that like. It's playing games with people, in my opinion, are more fun than not. A lot of the time, like single player games are still necessary for the industry, and I still love them. But it's like like if I'm gonna nerd out about something, I want to be able to nerd out about it with someone else. And I felt so out of place in there because everyone's talking about like I'm like hardcore for the average Destiny player, but like for hardcore Destiny players, I'm very casual. So they're like using terms I've never heard before. They're talking about weapons I don't know about, strategies I don't know about. Everything is kind of taken for granted. Like I wasn't a liability last night, but I also wasn't like a huge help to anyone. Like I was very much learning a lot of this, and like I can see why. Like as you're talking about, like nerdism kind of had to get pushed further into its own corner as things kind of become more casually nerdy or whatever, or as nerd culture becomes pop culture. And like the furthest reaches of that are like so like I think we talked about it, not on the podcast, but just like as people. Someone mentioned the term Metroidvania should be like abolished. And initially I disagree. I mean, abolish sounds like a harsher word, but like,
I know.
they're trying to like,
this is the hill I die on. Oh.
But their whole point was it's a hard barrier to entry for gamers. Like for a new gamer, if they're reading a review for something and the reviewer just casually is like, oh yeah, it's a Metroidvania, and then move on. Yeah. Someone that doesn't know what a Metroid or doesn't know what Metroid is, doesn't know what Castlevania is, and then a lot of the responses to that were, well, if you're pursuing this level of passion and knowledge for this subculture or whatever, it does require work to I don't know. All
That's
of this
interesting.
saying,
sorry.
No, just all of this to kind of say, like, if games like Destiny that had these really, like, maybe it was just the fact that I was like tired and had to pee the entire time, but I'm like, in my head, the raid is something that I think would be perfect end game content for the people that want to get the most efficient way through and have to do like when I say it's like team based, it's not like with Overwatch, you're playing with a team against another team, so like if one person goes down, there's a numbers advantage, but you can still kind of, pull your way through. With this, if one person goes down, full wipe. Doesn't matter. Like it's
Yeah.
it's very challenging. If you don't get things within a certain time frame, just complete wipe. Like that's why it took so long. But I'm just like, should the incentive to get super nerdy about something be like, is nerdy knowledge for nerdy knowledge's sake worth it? I guess. Like, should there be some kind of payoff? Like, should the community be the payoff? I've said often, like, if you're really, really into something, look for their meme community, because if you feel really alone and super niche about this interest, there are probably other people that think that too, and they're making content that'll make you pee yourself laughing. Like once I discovered Destiny memes, I was like, this is fucking great. And now I'm looking for more specific, like I tried to find a Spectrobes memes page and I couldn't find one, but
I think you're touching on something interesting. I didn't know this is where we would lead to, but I like when you're talking about like, I mean, because you're specifically referring to not just like lore, but like the language of like the Destiny community as well, and that aspect of it. But
like
still
the words
things
that we
you
are creating and using with each other. Yeah,
still things that if you learn, enhance your experience of playing Destiny. I think stuff like that is more valuable. I think stuff like lore is more like, you don't want the end to just justify the means. Like I think what makes something like Star Wars or Marvel, at least when they work best, movies, is that like Endgame and Infinity War work enough in isolation. I mean, just you can look at the box office totals and just see that like people saw those movies, saw Infinity War, wanted to come back for Endgame, who probably never saw a Marvel movie. I mean, considering both of them made more money than any other Marvel movie. Or even Star Wars, like all the ancillary books and comics are so unnecessary to understanding the majority of the movies.
And like completely irrelevant now, right? Like they're just not canon, right?
Well, the old ones, yeah. I'm talking about the new ones.
Okay.
But in both cases, or knowing all the details about the MCU, those things enhance your viewing of it if you're a fan. But they're not necessary. And I think the worst examples of that kind of storytelling are when you see the end, you get to the end, and you feel like all it did was set up something new or pay off something that was set up on the side. It needs to kind of, the end I think needs to work not necessarily in complete isolation because it's still part of a larger game or movie, but it needs to be worth it on its own, and then the kind of additional stuff can come in on the side. Whereas what you're talking about, I think, is a little more complicated, because you want a game like Destiny or Overwatch, which is, I can speak a little bit more from experience about, is
we can shift it. Yeah,
well, I mean, I don't want to completely shift it. So like, if this doesn't apply to Destiny, then stop me. But it's sort of what we were talking about, I think, last week, about how do you strike the balance between having something have the depth that you want it to feel worth it for the players who put in all the time, and how accessible do you want it to be for newer players who just want to and have a good time. And like, when a game doesn't supply that for you, the fandom will sometimes create it. It's not necessarily for the purpose of gatekeeping, but I mean, you see like how Melee came out as like a party game, really, and then over time it developed into this competitive scene where millions of people have played Melee who have no idea what the hell wave dashing is. And, you'd probably get a lot of Melee players who, maybe less harshly, but would say something to the effect of like, oh, you don't really play Melee, or you don't actually know how to play this game, when in reality none of that stuff was intended. So I think I was heading towards a particular thing at one point, but now I'm just kind of speaking more open-ended about the subject.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of sounded like you were pushing toward the like, if the developers of a game are not willing to implement whatever the community wants, like the community will kind of create it itself. I largely agree with that, but then I point to like, from Melee, like with the example of Melee specifically, for Melee you go to Brawl, which I feel like was kind of a step back in terms of the tightness of the mechanics and in terms of the
absolutely
competitive.
They focused on other things.
Yeah, like it was very much like, hey, we hear that there's this competitive thing, but also at that time I feel like the majority of players were playing in a casual, just I can make Pichu punch Donkey Kong, so I'm gonna make him do that. And then with
a lot of that stuff, did like the real like heavy competitive scene I think popped up, maybe not after Brawl, but like
I mean I was gonna say Smash 4, because when they announced that game, it was not just, hey, we're gonna it's we're making a new Smash Bros game, but you already knew that. We're also going to, like, that was the first time I really heard about Zero. Like they made the competitive and like the esports aspect of it, kind of put it to the forefront.
Absolutely.
I feel like, as the demand grows for more hardcore like tools, like in Injustice 1, the amount of information that you could get about individual moves was not great. And then the competitive scene kind of formed around Injustice 1, and you kind of saw more casual people. Like I played Injustice for the DC story, not so much for the tight gameplay of NetherRealm Studios. But after I was exposed to NetherRealm Studios, and kind of made the connection, oh shit, these are the Mortal Kombat people. Injustice 2, I was like, I'm going to take this more seriously. And they allowed me to do that with a more advanced... And I know that... So, like, I mentioned that the raid is, like, kind of the end game of the end game for Destiny. Like, in Destiny 1 and the beginning of Destiny 2, like, they didn't... Like, other than the raid, there wasn't a lot left to do. Whereas now in 2020, there's a lot for me to do as a Destiny player. So, like, back then when it was, there's not that much for me to... like I've hit the level cap. I've done all the missions. I have the equipment that I want right now. So like I should just wait. Like at that point when they released it, it was like, oh shit, now there's something. Like I can't just rest right now. I need to like keep training for this thing. And then once I beat this thing, there's also the like, I'm X% of the like I checked the trophy list for it. It's like 8% of trophy of Destiny players have beat the first raid. Yeah. So it's like cool. I'm in the top 10% of Destiny players, but like I thought that would do something for me, but it didn't. And it was also like when you were saying that at the end of it, you should feel like it's like if you're not going to give me relevant things, and again, this might just be because I'm late. Like I'm very like this, like the original game came out in the Destiny 2 came out in 2016. And like the raid was, I think it was the first raid. So like running a 4-year-old content, that's fine. But like at the end of it, it wasn't even, and the fact that, like the fact that it was so hardcore kind of ruins the experience almost. Like with a Marvel movie, like they'll still expose me for being a fucking casual. I didn't know that Bucky was the Winter Soldier. Also, I didn't see Captain America 1 before I went to see Captain America 2. So me doing my research as a good nerd does before as a lazy good nerd because I didn't see the first fucking movie. I'm like, okay, let me just look up the Winter Soldier's power set so that I can like kind of go in expecting whatever. Oh shit, this is Captain America's buddy. Okay, this is a very different movie than like that reveal. Like I saw it with someone that didn't know anything about the comics, loved the first movie, and then had her mind fucking blown when Bucky took off his mask. Yeah. Like she fucking freaked and she's Sebastian Stan, but like
Stan.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like in the raid there were, and like I try to pay attention to Destiny's story, but like literally you have to access it through the fucking Bungie website. Or I mean now it's easier, but like in the past you had to go through the website and do all this dumb stuff.
Well, again, it's like Overwatch where you have to watch the animated shorts that are like not even in the game to kind of
even
know the
then
lore.
I would give Overwatch the edge, because even in Overwatch when you watch those cutscenes they give you a lot. Like they are well produced. They are like they provide value separate from the game, I think. Like even if they didn't add anything really in terms of lore, if they were just the same quality but like just fun, like great voice acting, great animation, I would just watch those in my free time as like a supplement to Overwatch just because I like Overwatch. Whereas with Destiny, like if I want to learn lore, this dude, my name is by fucking, he will go into the website, he'll go into like whatever the game is, he'll listen to all the audio stuff, he will compile all of the lore, and so like he's like the chronicler, like he's the guy. But even watching those videos, like he's got a very calm and soothing voice. I fall asleep to Destiny lore more than I pay attention to Destiny lore now, purely out of how it's presented. And like you said with Marvel movies, like it will enhance the experience, but like with Destiny, it's just like you'll hear 3 lines of dialogue as you're running around shooting stuff. But if you're with a clan full of 6 people, you're not going to be listening to the dialogue. So I'm just like, I'm following orders, but I have no idea what that sounds really bad. But like,
no, I get what you're saying though.
Like it should.
And it seems to me like Destiny is a thing that grew. At least it established all those things over the course of like people who stuck with it from the beginning, rather than trying to necessarily bring in a bunch of new players and make all of that information accessible. Whereas again, the thing with Marvel is it's not how everything should do it, but it works for those movies because they're also trying to be succeeded at being the biggest movies in the world, as well as being something that you can get really specific about. But you don't have to. Whereas something like Destiny, especially after maybe they didn't have the launch that they wanted to, and
both times
didn't become the IP exactly. Just
like
didn't
literally,
become
Destiny
the IP
1 came out kind of like meh, and then it was like, okay, no, we're building something good here. Hey, Destiny 2, we're gonna like kind of leave off, but it's still for the time not as good as it should have been, and now we're gonna build it up to what I think now is like a. As much as I'm complaining, like it is my most played game of last year.
Yeah.
I keep going back and forth over whether or not it's my favorite game, period, over God of War. But like, I don't know. Like another discussion.
My point is that they seemed. I think if they wanted to make the choice to make it easier for you or someone even more new than you to get all this information to them, they could. But it's kind of like older RPGs that a lot of people still play. Like there are people who still play like EverQuest and stuff like that, you know, where you really have to like know how that shit works. Or even playing, I mean, hell, even playing the older Pokemon, you know? Like there's just so much information that isn't in the game for you. Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, how like From Software games are basically built around, we know that they're going to be like, they're going to be 4 of you that actually knock on every single door. They will tell you. And like I want to beat a Souls game this year.
But that's the thing is I think it's okay for things that have that intention and a community that understands that to go with that less accessible model. Like I think people shouldn't get offended when they think like, you know, games should have easy modes and stuff. But that also doesn't mean that not Destiny. Sorry, Dark Souls needs to have an easy mode. It shouldn't be forced on games. Like that's not the same thing as like accessibility options for things like colorblind mode and whatnot. Like I think that's a different issue. But if you're talking about like whether a game should have like it's like is difficulty bad because it locks out certain players, I don't think that's necessarily the case. And it's not even just difficulty, but even like, you know, having a lore that you need to read up on or something, like all that stuff. If that's the game you want, you know, if you acknowledge that that's the audience you're gonna get and you'll struggle to get other people, I think that's totally fine. And then you get fandoms who try to add gatekeeping where that clearly wasn't intentionally supposed to be, and that's the issue that runs into with Marvel. But really, obviously, the big one is Star Wars. You know, like there was a tweet going around not that long ago that was like, if you're not a real Star Wars fan unless you've watched all the movies, watched all the TV shows, read the books, read the comics, played the games, like all these different things, and it's like, no, like that's not how it's ever been sold to audiences, you know? I mean, and even when they might say like, oh, it's all connected, they're not going to turn and tell you, yeah, if you haven't read the books, don't go and see this movie. They're going to be like, go see the movie, pay the ticket, and then go and read the books too and buy them. Like, they're not going to try to lock anything out to you, even if it is all supposed to quote unquote work together and, you know, be all part of the same whole, you know? I mean, they're not going to make it inaccessible, even if there's ways to be more invested in it. I hate seeing those kind of gatekeeping pop up, and it's honestly the same thing with the Dark Souls like get good thing. Like that should be used more as motivation than as a dismissal, and I think that's the issue there. Like I don't have a problem inherently with the idea of like, no, you have to put in the work. Like this is a game that's asking you to put in a little more work, and if you don't have the time or patience for you, it's not the game for you. Like that's justifiable. But it's fans being like dismissive of new players for that reason, like rather than just being like, yeah, no, you have to actually like put in a little more work into this. Like if not, this might not be for you. Rather than like is better than being like like, fuck you if you can't get good. Like, that's your fault, not the game's. Yeah. Like, it's all about tone, essentially.
Like,
you know,
at the end of the day, it's all about, like, you are choosing to play Bloodborne. You are choosing to play whatever game you're choosing to play. Yeah. So it's not like it's like if someone was putting a gun to your head and said, beat the fucking cleric beast right now with no hits or I'm going to kill you. Yeah, the game should be easier for the sake of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, but like,
or it's like the same thing with like why Kirby games people complain that they're too easy, but they're made for newcomers to games and kids. Like
that was a rough, because growing up Kirby games I loved them very much, but I was also a dumb child and just didn't realize that they are. I'm not trying to say that I was extra dumb. I might have been. Yeah. But I don't know. Like I had to let that go. Like, I can't remember what Kirby game it was, but I was, like, super hyped for it, got it, and, like, the first mission, I was like, okay, that was easy, it's the first mission, and then we, like, breezed through the first world in a good, like, 10 minutes, and I'm like, I am not the target demographic.
That's the game you bought,
Yeah, this is not for me.
And I think any game or any movie can be for anyone. Like, you can be an adult and like Kirby. No, I like because you don't know what everyone's into. Like an adult can be into Kirby and it's not, and like who's like a really good at platformers but just enjoys the kind of lighter, breezy, aesthetically pleasing game on occasion. I
misunderstood what you meant.
Yeah, that isn't the target demographic. But that doesn't mean that you should feel entitled that you should have the ability to like every game. Like not everyone is compatible with everything. You know. And
in the same regard, going kind of back to your gatekeeping comment, like just because you learned everything doesn't mean everyone else has to. Yeah. Like I think
exactly.
Yeah, like it's cool that you did that, and like if in a conversation, like if for some reason some Reddit argument broke out and one person was like, "Hey, for the record, I have played like, if there's an argument about the like Final Fantasy games and someone has played literally every Final Fantasy since the beginning of Final Fantasy, I would personally, I would trust their opinion over someone that just played Final Fantasy 13 and was like, this is the greatest game of all time. Yeah. And like, just purely off of, well, you put in more time, which means in my head, you would put in more, there's just more time put in my head. But then it's down to me as the individual to make the choice between, okay, I'm going to side with this person's argument over this person's because of whatever reason they're putting out. Like, I think it's very helpful. Like, I love, like I brought up the My Name is Bife guy. Like I know a bunch of cool stuff in Destiny lore purely because this dude fucking, and I don't know if he's doing it alone or if he's like compiling stuff with people, but like this channel specifically, like that's really cool. That's really helpful. Star Wars Explained, really cool, really helpful. As someone that doesn't want to go in and, for one thing, buy, but also like have to sit through
every little bit.
Yeah, like especially as things get like less. Like as things are moved in and out of canon, like it's very easy to say, okay, I know that this is in right now because this person said it and this video is from 2 weeks ago. But we went on a super tangent. I'm okay with that. I like the conversation.
I think it's a good conversation. I think it ultimately comes down to just good or bad faith, like decision making or choices. You know, like people who are either gatekeeping or complaining that something is like not like there's either gatekeeping because you want that thing to be all yours, or there's, complaining that something's inaccessible to you because you are like, you want that thing that isn't yours to be yours. Like both of those are bad and in bad faith, even if they are on the opposite ends of each other. And there's perfectly good ways of going about essentially the same arguments, without having it being about either like a sense of entitlement really either way, just in two different forms, okay, so I don't know what we really originally planned to talk about this episode. We covered a lot of it. Maybe not all of it.
Once the conversation started moving, I was just like, I know that we said we would talk about this, but I'm also very interested to see what you think.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had as concrete a plan the last couple episodes, and I think it's worked out for us. But the year's kind of just off to a not necessarily. I don't know, not in a bad way, but it's off to a slower start, you know? Like, it's not like the end of the year where we started, where there's all these big movies coming out and big games coming out and award shows and wrap up, and it's the end of the decade. Like,
the biggest news of 2020 so far has just, in terms of, like, nerd shit, is just, like, delay. Pretty
much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Even
until, like,
Sonic.
tonight with the Oscars, but even then we already talked about, like, the things we liked, so it's not as much to talk about, unless we had seen everything or really even care that much, which I don't think is really our bag. But
I want to care.
yeah, I thought obviously the big first comic book movie of the year is Birds of Prey, which, you know, we brought up earlier, talked a little bit about before getting into that Joker talk. You said you're planning on seeing it. Do you think ultimately you will see it?
No,
or is there like a
at this point, it just becomes a matter of, like, next time I'm in a theater, if they don't have, and the only reason I'm prioritizing, like, I want to see Harley Quinn more than I want to see 1917, but I also know that if I'm going to see one of those movies in theaters and one of those movies not, 1917 needs to be the one to see in theaters.
Right. Well, I'm just curious because obviously you're the bigger DC fan of the two of us. At least that's what has come up the most here too. But you haven't. I know you haven't seen the last two big DC releases other than Joker.
Still haven't seen Aquaman or Shazam.
Yeah, so I was just curious. Like, is it the Batman connection? Like, why are you committed to seeing Birds of Prey if you weren't so much to the other two?
For one thing, it looks good. Like, it just genuinely does look. Like, I think. Not okay. You know what? No, I'm not gonna say it like that because that was mad disrespectful. Like, I did.
Yeah, a little bit.
I did want to see Shazam. I just didn't get around to it, and then everything that I had heard was it's good, but with that tone of like we all know that after, like, and you were with me, like, we saw Batman v Superman together. Like, I don't think I've ever been as mad walking out of a theater, like, as personally offended by what I had just seen than at Batman v Superman. So, like, put themselves in a hole, and then Justice League kind of cemented themselves in that hole. Aquaman did nothing to, you know, in my head, like, pull me into the theater. I had heard nothing to make me feel like I was wrong about that, like, about not seeing it. I'm sure I'll still see it eventually. Like, it's on HBO, I think.
It is. At least for now.
Yeah. Shazam, I'll see. It's just I have no interest. Like, when I look at Shazam, it's not, this is going to be fun, or, like, it's like, I'm sure I'll enjoy it, but is it going to be worth the hour and a half I'm going to spend watching it? Like,
well, I definitely liked it more than Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey. Definitely Birds of Prey is way better than Aquaman, in my opinion. Comparing it, I don't want to compare it directly to the Joker because they're very different things, but, you know, I think I'm more likely to rewatch this more often. But at the same time, it was like, DC's been on this run where all their movies have either been pretty different, like even Shazam, which has still a lot of the traditional superhero trappings, felt like something that was out of place for what DC had been making at the very least. You know, it's like very unabashedly optimistic and fun, and not necessarily a kids movie like exclusively, but definitely something that's more
they've
for
got
kids
Fortnite
in a
dances.
way. Yeah, I mean, like Aquaman, I think is probably more kid friendly than Shazam in a lot of ways, or at least more appealing to kids.
Because he straight up plays Fortnite in it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole movie is him playing Fortnite. For 2 hours and 45 fucking minutes.
Wait, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes?
It's really long. I might be exaggerating a little bit. I don't know.
I'm going to look up the numbers. Keep talking. I want to know.
But the thing about Birds of Prey is that it felt like, okay, well, we've arrived. DC is now making, you know, good movies, bad movies, whatever you want to say. They're making successful movies. They're not, like, scrambling anymore the way they were a couple years ago. Like, and every movie felt like a reaction to the last movie. This just felt like a movie, like, with a character that is not new to movies, but, you know, this is, like, her first, like, leading role, and it's not... It's pretty well tied to Suicide Squad, but if they wanted to, you know, break the continuity, it wouldn't be like a really big deal or whatever. And it definitely has a lot of flair and personality to it. Like there's definitely a sense of style. But it didn't necessarily feel too new to me. The story isn't like epic in any way that makes it feel like more important for that reason. it's definitely like a good Harley Quinn movie. If you are a big Harley Quinn fan, I think you'll be satisfied. If you think you could, like, I think this will convince a lot of people to like Harley Quinn as well. I think this cemented for me how good Margot Robbie is in the role, but it also cemented for me that, like, I don't care about Harley Quinn as much as I do Superman or Batman. And that's not necessarily going to change unless the sequel is really, really good. I'm glad, like, it exists, and I think it's a big deal in a way that it's not getting enough credit for. I mean, obviously, like, people are happy to see a female-led superhero movie with all these different women leads doing, like, having success together. But there's a lot of other things that I don't think it's getting enough credit for doing a little differently. That said, it's also getting some criticisms, or not even criticism. Some people are using it as a way of praising it, that, like, it's similar in a lot of ways to things like Deadpool or even the first Suicide Squad. And I think those aren't bad or good. They're just a part of it. Like, it's just a choice. Like, it doesn't feel as, like, edgy or exciting as, like, Deadpool did when it first came out. And it doesn't, and the Suicide Squad, like, visual connections feel more like, oh, I guess Suicide Squad could have been better if it just, hadn't been as, like, edited. I watched Suicide Squad this morning, by the way.
Are you okay?
Because it was on my mind after seeing Birds of Prey. It's not, like, as horrible as I remember it. But at the same time, like, again, all the kind of weird things that it got a lot of criticism for, like the kind of weird out of, like editing pace and all that, worked a lot better in Birds of Prey, I think, because of the tone of the movie, and also the jokes were just better. But, I don't think Birds of Prey broke ground or did anything bad either. Like, it's a solid movie that I think will be really, really good for some audience members. But, all that, like, I think it's a good example of unnecessary controversy surrounding a movie. Like, obviously,
like, is it just because it's a women-led project? Like, is that purely it? Okay.
Because it's not just the sexism, though. It's like, I'm seeing people who I wouldn't necessarily think are making this call because of sexism. But if you look at the numbers, like, it is the worst opening weekend, I think. Opening weekend of the DCEU, and it probably won't make as much money as a lot of the other ones. But I think people are even freaking out too much about that, too. Like, this is like an $80 million movie. It will make its budget back. Like, rewatching Suicide Squad, I realized, like, they got lucky that movie made a lot of money, because that is a big budget, a big spectacle movie that really didn't need to be.
It really didn't need to be.
Exactly. It didn't at all. And Birds of Prey knew its scope and knew its tone and fit its budget. And I think, they could have done better in marketing to maybe get it a little bit more money and maybe a more clear title. Just calling it Harley Quinn or Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey would have been better.
I from the marketing standpoint, I can't get behind. I've seen, and never mind. I was about to say, I've seen ads for Harley Quinn, but I'm also a not self-abashed. I'm a nerd, so they would show me nerdy shit. And I think that, I don't know, I think Birds of Prey, like, I don't think of it as, like, the I think of it as either as, like, the Harley Quinn movie or Birds of Prey. I separate those two parts from the title entirely.
And that's kind of how the movie feels in some way too.
Really? Okay, I didn't hear about that.
It's like a Harley Quinn movie, and then it's a Birds of Prey movie.
Okay.
Like, I think that's why I think Harley Quinn should have led in the title too.
Just Harley Quinn.
Because no one, like, I mean, I work at a movie theater and we had to put it on the marquee. I didn't put Harley Quinn, I put just Birds of Prey, and of course I'm not going to put the entire thing up there because it's, a mouthful and would take up the entire marquee. So, I mean, or even, like, it's not even just that. It's like tickets or even ticketing websites aren't necessarily all going to write out the full title, But, like, take something like Birdman, which had a similarly long title that was easily, like, just removable. Yeah. But if you go, like, I think this actually... Maybe this isn't entirely true, because I know there were some people who went in being like, this isn't a superhero movie, but I think Birdman still works for it as a title, and, like, as from a marketing perspective too. Like, you're not necessarily confused if you've seen a trailer and you see the title. Some people, again, might have only seen the title and seen Michael Keaton was in it. But apart from that, like, in this case, even if you see the trailer, it's still kind of like, well, I like Harley Quinn, but it's called Birds of Prey, so I guess it's not like a Harley Quinn movie. Like, there's a little bit more confusion in regards to that.
I mean, I think in terms of if you are exposed to the marketing, I don't know. Like, everything I'm seeing is Margot Robbie's face. Everything I'm seeing is like, I literally, as I was walking home last night, I was just seeing someone posted about her name is Journey Smollett. I'm pretty sure she's
Journey Smollett. Yeah, Jussie Smollett's sister.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up over it. Fucking, that's one of my favorite pictures of all time. Just the picture of him just being like, everyone makes mistakes. Don't beat yourself up over it. Fucking idiot. But so Journey Smollett is like one of the like top 3 just child boy Bobo like crushes, because she was in this movie Roll Bounce with Bow Wow. Yeah. And she was just like the ultimate like just as a child before puberty hits, and you're just like, I want to go to a movie with her, and I have no other thoughts because I don't know what to do after that. So like seeing her as she's Black Canary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
she's good. She's good in the movie. The whole cast is
she's a fantastic actress. She was in fucking The Great Debaters. She's great in that. Like everything she pops up in, she's great. And I had zero idea she was in the fucking movie until last night, purely because someone on Twitter was like, "Yo, you know the girl you had a crush on Roll Bounce? She's in this movie now." And like,
well, that's the problem, is that they're marketing a Harley Quinn movie as a Birds of Prey movie, or they're marketing a Birds of Prey movie as a Harley Quinn movie. Either way, it's not really like consistent. Yeah. It's like, that's the thing, is like, if you've seen the trailers or the posters, you're like, oh, it's a Harley Quinn movie. But then if you go to the bar and ask your friends, hey, are you going to go see Birds of Prey this weekend? They're like, no, I don't know what that is. And then they move on, you know? But if they hear it's a Harley
Quinn movie.
Yeah, like if you say, are you going to see Harley Quinn? Like, let's say it was called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. Right. Either way, whether you just call it Harley Quinn or you call it Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, you get the name that people know out first. So then you at least pique some interest in conversation. Or again, if you see it on a marquee or something, you know, because it's like, if you're walking past the theater I work at, you'll see, oh, Birds of Prey, what's that? Look down, you see the poster. That's literally that one in my background if you're watching this on video. And you go, oh, Harley Quinn. It says it on the poster. Maybe I had to look at it a little close, but either way, I see Margot Robbie's big face. And she's very famous. Clearly Harley Quinn. Character's more, like, pretty famous. You know, you kind of know what you're getting. But, you know, if you see it and you're driving by, you might just see Birds of Prey. I wonder what that is. Maybe it's about birds. Maybe it's a nature movie. Like, I don't know. It's just, you know.
Could you imagine?
Maybe you're one of the few people who remember the 2003 like CW Birds of Prey show that ran for 1 season, and you're like, they're bringing it back.
The American Avian Society sues this movie for like false advertising. None of the women they said were birds were actually birds. They were all actresses.
I know this was supposed to be more of a review, and we just kind of talked about the marketing.
I think
I don't really have a whole lot to say. I think it's like a fun movie to like recite. Like, it'll be fun to kind of quote back and be like, "Hey, remember that moment? That was funny." But for me personally, I'm down to see a sequel. I don't know. It felt kind of like I really like the Ant-Man movies. They're a lot of fun, and since they're MCU for me, like they get a little bit higher praise. But like they ultimately end up not like the top of my list of the Marvel movies, because as fun as they are, they're like, and the character, like when Ant-Man shows up in Endgame, it pays off emotionally and stuff like that. Like, I do care, and I do care about Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, but the story they're telling in the movie is not like tug at your heartstrings. There's no moment like where you know, I mean, it really tries to. It's just fun. It's just really fun, and it's worth seeing. All I want. If you're a fan. But you know, I
like that's
basically, I think they're missing out on an audience they could be having because of the marketing. But I don't think this movie, as much as I felt hype going into it. Like, there was a lot of talk online about it, especially when the first reviews came out. And part of me felt like, I think this movie could end up being as big as like Aquaman or Shazam, but it really doesn't look like it's going to be, and that doesn't surprise me. But you know, I think there's plenty of people out there who would be pretty content with it if they did bother giving it a chance.
Like, honestly, I'm a little more hyped now than I was when we started this conversation, because I'm realizing like Huntress is one of my favorite. Like, the version of Huntress where it's Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne's daughter. Like, she's in Earth 2. Like, she was one of my favorite characters in Earth 2.
Yeah. Second
only to Black Superman, because he's Black Superman, but like Balzad. Like I love Cassandra Cain in the current the Bat Family. I can't remember the actual name of it. Like the Detective Comics right now. Like I've liked Harley Quinn. I think she works better without the Joker, which is like a weird. I feel like that's a hot take, but also I feel so confident in saying that I'm not feeling like it's
well,
that
after
hot.
seeing Suicide Squad and back to back with Birds of Prey, like she just her whole role in that movie, and it's true of a lot of versions of Harley Quinn until more recently, is that it's literally just so about her and Joker, and it's like, isn't this a toxic and abusive relationship that she's still in?
Yeah.
And Suicide Squad ends with her going back with the Joker, and that's like her ending of that movie after the whole movie tells you that the relationship is horrible.
Brought to you by Stockholm
And then Birds
Syndrome.
of Prey, and then Birds of Prey is like, the whole movie's about her getting over him. That's good. Like, that's the much more worthwhile Harley Quinn story to tell, because that's just the much more worthwhile story to tell, I think.
Like, I feel
in general,
with Harley Quinn, you can have fun with her origin, but I feel like the idea of, like, her relationship with the Joker is a part of her origin story to, like, in a lot of cases, it's either, like, you know, she was a normal person, then she met him, and then he kind of made her crazy, or she was already crazy and then made her entire life about getting to meet him and then devoting his life to her. And, like, both takes I feel are cool, but also that's just the, like, every Batman story does not need Martha's pearls hitting the ground. Like, we get it. Like, after, and I think now that Harley Quinn is a household name, also shout out to the fact that she's like, what? Is she like as old as us in terms of character growth? Because she started in like
Batman she started in the
so like 96.
So maybe a little around our around the same age as us.
Like the fact that she is at the same level as Batman. I mean, maybe shit,
but can lead a movie.
Yeah. Like she can lead a movie,
and that's what I think they should have had more confidence in, is that she can lead a movie and not have to market it as some kind of teen movie.
I feel like even though she's not like, even though I would, if you walk down the street and we're just like, tell me Harley Quinn's like, what is Harley Quinn? Harleen Quinzel, what is her real name? And just ask some random person. Like I feel like they wouldn't be able to tell you. But also, if she was like in a lineup, like if you put the cheetah, and I only say the cheetah because I see the Wonder Woman poster behind you. If you put the cheetah and Margot Robbie and Harley Quinn next to each other, like before the DCEU started, you'd still probably get more people recognizing Harley Quinn than Cheetah. Like in terms of
absolutely, yeah.
Cheetah was a bad example. That is purely because I see the Wonder Woman poster next to you, and I know that she would lose against Wonder Woman.
I mean, just even amongst like obviously Joker's good proof that the Batman villains are big enough to lead their own franchises and stuff like that. Joker's probably number one, and you know, maybe there are more well-known Batman villains to people who are familiar with Batman, like your Penguins or Riddlers or whatever. I think anyone who's like I think Harley Quinn is a good example of one that can truly like stand on her own and still have that, maintain that popularity. Like I think people might know more people might know who the Penguin is, but I think less people would be interested in seeing a Penguin movie.
I think I'm going all the way back to your Joker question about what makes Joker. I think it's the fact that he's good with or without Batman. Like he's an interesting character with or without Batman, whereas Penguin is just like a deformed mob boss. And like,
see, I think that's interesting because I did like Joker, but I think as a portray, I think it deviates. The less it relies on Batman, the more I think it deviates from what I think of as the Joker and the source material. And I have a video about this on my YouTube channel where I make the point that I think Joker's more interesting as a concept, or only interesting as a concept when he's paired against Batman. No, or not only. I don't want to make it that definitive, but I think he's by far most interesting as a concept when he's facing off against Batman.
I want to agree.
Dead air.
I know. I want to agree, but I think
faster.
I think if Batman, so if you take a Batman story, you can kind of swap out the villains, kind of willy nilly, and have like a equal. I mean,
I think his stories are pretty reliant on the villains.
I was gonna say it's
like,
sure it's reliant on like the villain. He needs someone to play against, but it's all within the playing field of Gotham. I feel like Batman becomes so much less interesting when you leave Gotham, because he has that like because Gotham is just like a very interesting place in terms of how it's set up, and like it's the fact that crime and like evil are like inherent to the structure of Gotham. It's not like, oh, there are a few bad apples. It's just like Gotham is where the bad apples are grown type shit. So I feel like you can take Joker out of a Batman story, but as long as Gotham is still there, you can still get Batman's like.
Yeah, I don't think Joker the movie would have worked if they set it in real life 1980s New York or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I mean that's what I think when people separate Joker the movie from comic book stuff, that bothers me because when you look at how they established the world, they're talking about rats the size of like cats and stuff like that. Like the trash being piled up to like the first above first story buildings, like that's exaggerated comic book version of a like real life impoverished city. That's not what any of that looks like in real life, you know?
And like I think they also did a good job in like comics. Like right now I'm thinking like my favorite version of Gotham is The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah. Like I feel like that's also like a very basic like Batman favorite, but just the fact that you'll like kind of follow someone walking down the street and you will feel like, okay, I understand people living in Gotham. Like you can get from point A to point B, you'll have a job, whatever, but you'll also see how fucking normal it is to just be walking down the street and then someone mugs you and you either have to be like, that's Gotham, or you die there and hope that Batman saves you. But like, like and they kind of also set up the whole, I don't know. Now I want to rewatch Joker so I can know that if it was just hype going out of it, or if I actually do enjoy the movie, because I've only seen it the once. Because I also don't want to watch it again because it's gross feeling. Like I would watch Parasite again because I feel like there were funny, like it was tense as shit, but like you could have a tense moment where you're genuinely feeling scared for what's happening on screen, like without trying to spoil anything. But like as this is happening, one character can just like do one very minor thing and you're like, ha, and then you kind of feel okay. And now I kind of want to just talk about Parasite spoilers forever. That'll have to be a whole other thing.
Yeah, after people have more time to maybe see it now that they've heard of it because it won Best Picture.
Congrats. I just saw the picture.
Hey, remember how we said we were going to wrap up 40 minutes ago?
Oh my, we're done with the podcast. Pull over your car and find something else. If you listen to us in the car, I don't know.
I started using the Up Next feature on Apple Podcasts, and I'm sure you can just do the same thing. I don't use Spotify for podcasts, but I'm sure you can queue stuff. The thing is, so many podcasts I listen to end with like ads that I end up just like grabbing my phone and skipping anyway. That like it's not even that useful. But we don't have ads. You can just sit through the last 20 seconds of music that plays at the tail end of every episode.
I thought you were gonna say let's just sit in silence for the last few seconds.
We could do that too. Just end quietly. Just end really quietly.
Hey, do you remember that story where